Insane 21-year-old flies plane at midnight to save 173 lives, you won't believe what happened. The clock struck midnight, a chilling hour steeped in darkness and mystery. Somewhere in the stillness, young Layla stood frozen in front of the tarmac, her heart hammering in her chest like a war drum. This wasn't just a night like any other, it was the night she would defy the odds. She was just 21, and her pulse raced in sync with the roar of the engines. A quick glance at the weather report sent ice down her spine. A dense fog hung low, almost menacing, as if it were a thick blanket smothering secrets it hoped to keep undiscovered. With an almost supernatural determination, she climbed into the cockpit, her fingers trembling as they brushed against the controls. The plane smelled of metal and machine oil, a scent that usually comforted her but now felt electrical, buzzing with the weight of lives hanging in the balance. 30 minutes ago, news had flashed across her phone: a plane was in distress, its engine sputtering wildly, battling to keep 173 souls on board from plummeting into the abyss below. Layla felt the urgency in her bones, they needed her, and she could either answer the call or let fear paralyze her. The air crackled around her as she punched in the coordinates to the ailing aircraft. Shadows danced on the walls of the cockpit, and strange noises echoed from outside, amplifying the tension. Was that a scream? No, maybe it was just the wind. She couldn't afford to hesitate, every second counted. Her breaths became shallow, the lump in her throat refused to budge. She remembered her late-night studies, practicing maneuvers under flickering lights. "You've got this," she muttered, trying to ignore the sweat pooling on her brow. The dreaded fog swallowed her whole as she tore across the night sky, her mind racing with the possible scenarios. Would she reach them in time? Would she be the hero or the fool? Her fingers tightened around the yoke, knuckles white against the metallic grip. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect." Back in the cockpit, the radar pinged ominously, marking just how far she had to go. Cries for help echoed in her mind. Suddenly, a blinding light pierced the fog, illuminating a shape in the distance. Was it the other plane? Panic set in as the lights flickered again, and the communication system buzzed to life. "Pilot return. We're out of control." Layla's chest tightened. This was the moment where courage would either forge a hero or fracture under pressure. She steered toward the chaos, doubt swirling like the fog around her. But one question loomed large: would she ever find the courage to face what awaited her in the cloudy expanse of the night? The fog thickened, wrapping around Layla's plane like a shroud. Every muscle in her body tensed as the words from the radio echoed in her ears. "Pilot return. We're out of control." Panic surged through her veins, but she couldn't afford to panic. Not now. With her heart racing, she squinted through the glass, trying to make sense of the blurred shadows ahead. Was that it? The distressed aircraft? The thought of 173 lives hanging by a thread gripped her with icy fear. Adrenaline blasted through her as she adjusted her altitude, searching desperately for any sign of the other plane. "Come on, just a little further," she whispered to herself. The tip of her tongue darted out, wetting her dry lips. She flicked her gaze to the radar. Nothing. Just that relentless, disheartening ping on the screen. She needed visibility. Then it happened. The fog broke momentarily, revealing a distant flash of red and green lights, a beacon in the darkness. There it was. She could see the silhouette of the troubled craft, swaying dangerously in the midnight sky. Layla felt a rush of urgency. Gritting her teeth, she pressed forward, hands steady against the yoke. "Mayday! Mayday! This is Flight 732. Anyone out there? A voice broke through the static, trembling with fear. "Flight 732, this is Layla," she shot back. "I'm on my way. Hold tight, I'm coming." The words tumbled out of her mouth, but doubt screamed inside her head. Could she really pull this off? The radio crackled again. "Layla, we're losing altitude, engines are failing." Each word felt like a hammer driving nails into her resolve. She could hear the panic. She could feel it, a surge of determination swelled within her. "Focus, Layla. You can do this." She remembered the simulations, the countless hours spent in practice, honing her skills. She recounted safety protocols, reminding herself to remain calm amid the chaos. The wind grew fierce, rattling the cockpit. Layla braced herself, guiding the plane closer to the ailing craft. It was now or never. The glow of their lights pulsated, signaling their desperation, and her heart urged her to accelerate, push through the fog, and reach them. Then she caught sight of the ground below, a jarring wall of darkness, menacing and unforgiving. Adrenaline flooded her body. This wasn't just a rescue, it was a fight against nature itself. She pulled back on the yoke, navigating through the turbulent winds, ears popping with pressure. "Layla. Our engines are sputtering," came the panicked voice again. The fear in it sparked something visceral in Layla. It turned into a fire within her. "Stay with me," she cried, teeth clenched. "You're not alone." But as she neared the distressed plane, a horrifying jolt shot through her. The radio fizzled and suddenly went silent. Her heart stopped. In that moment, a sickening realization washed over her. The other craft was spiraling, out of control. "No, no, no!" screamed Layla, her voice lost in a sea of noise. She had to act now. The distance that once felt manageable now opened up like a chasm. But something flickered amidst the chaos, a glow in the darkness, and before she could think, she was on course. Engines roared beneath her, but what was blaring was the deafening silence in her own mind. She needed to connect. She needed to reach them, and fast. But then she noticed something off, a shadow passing too quickly. A flicker of movement in the corner of her eye that sent chills racing down her spine. What else was in the sky with her? The question echoed wildly in her mind as the world around her began to distort, the panic rising like the fog once more. Was she already too late? Layla strained her eyes against the fog, heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The silhouette of the distressed aircraft swayed precariously, but the flickering lights pulled her closer, igniting a fierce resolve. Just moments before, she had felt invincible. Now, uncertainty clawed at her as the shadow she had glimpsed hovered dangerously nearby. She barely had time to contemplate what it could be before another jarring shudder rattled her plane. A violent gust slammed into her from the side, nearly throwing her off course. The radio buzzed back to life, static gnawed at her senses. "Layla. We're spinning." It was the voice of someone on Flight 732, and there was no mistaking the fear saturated in their tone. "Just hold on," Layla shouted, forcing her breath to slow. "I'm coming." With trembling fingers, she steadied the controls, pushing through the roaring wind. The emergency alarm screeched, and her grip tightened. Her thoughts darted back to her training, her simulations, and every hair-raising emergency she had faced in the cockpit. But this was different. This was real. The stakes couldn't be higher. Focusing on the blinking lights of the downed aircraft just below her, she squinted. Another shadow flitted past her in the dense fog, almost taunting. "Is it a bird? A drone?" she whispered, heedless of the fear creeping into her mind. She had to make contact. It was a choice: face the unknown threat or save the lives teetering on the edge below. "Engines. We're losing engines." The voice cracked again, the tremor unmistakable. "Trust me," she yelled back with unyielding fierceness, guiding her plane steady with fierce determination. The ground loomed beneath, dark and menacing, like an abyss waiting to swallow them. As she drew nearer, the lurching movements of the other craft sent daggers of panic racing through her veins. In the flickering lights, she could see it defeat. One wing dropped perilously low, trailing smoke. Layla! Layla! The voice surged with despair now, an urgent plea that pierced her heart. We can't, her heart hammered against her ribcage. She was only seconds away, but every instinct screamed that time was slipping through her fingers. Without thinking, she flipped a switch, opening her landing gear, an invitation to safety. Just focus on my voice, she instructed, inhaling deeply, her mind racing with calculations. Get ready to brace. There was no more static, no more wailing engines. Just silence, thick like the fog enveloping them, and her pulse roaring in her ears. Layla saw something dart from the shadow, a flash of metal cutting through the gloom, the unknown threat. Moving fast, she searched frantically for a plan. They'd collide. Or maybe this was a trick of the fog. Unbearable doubt filled her chest, but there was no room for hesitation. She was the only one in the air. Make a hard left, she commanded, feeling the weight of the decision crash down on her. Now. The other plane responded abruptly, tilting as Layla fought to control her own trajectory. She tore through the air, pushing forward to intercept, but the lights ahead tantalized with their flicker of hope, teasing her closer, but that glimmer unexpectedly snuffed out, the silhouette vanished, a whisper into the mist. Flight 732. Can you hear me? Panic clawed at her throat, but she refused to yield. She tightened her grip on the yoke, her eyes wild. We're almost there. Stay with me. Suddenly, a low rumble filled the cockpit, overwhelming her senses. The shadow cast from earlier swelled, hovering just out of reach. Her heart sank. Was it too late? Layla. The transmission cut, replaced by a haunting silence that resonated through her. In that terrifying moment, she understood. She wasn't just racing against the clock, she was racing against fate. But what if that shadow carried more than just despair? What if it brought a new threat that would change everything? In an instant, the world around her morphed into a swirling storm, and she braced herself. What was waiting for her in the depths of the fog? Layla's heart raced as the fog thickened, swallowing her plane's lights. Was that the hum of engines? Or had she imagined it? She flicked her gaze between the swirling darkness and the emergency lights of Flight 732, desperately willing them to show behavior, any sign that those on board were alive. Layla. The voice shattered the stillness, raw panic threading through the static-laced transmission. We're losing it. Please. The reality of the moment squeezed her chest tight. This was not a simulation. This was life or death. Could she really bring them in for a landing? Could she face the implications of failure? The thought twisted in her gut. Suddenly, an unfamiliar noise cut through the tension, like a predator lurking just out of sight. Layla's breath hitched. That dark shadow, once just a fleeting figure, now felt like something more, a threat. Or was it something else entirely? Stay calm, she whispered to herself, shaking her head to dispel the impending dread. Focus. Out of the corner of her eye, a flash sparked within the fog, a blinding beacon that erupted into flame. It lit the scene, revealing a vision so chilling it left her breathless, a swarm of figures, quickly emerging from the dark. People. No, silhouettes, shrouded in horror. Panic clawed at her throat, she gripped the yoke firmly. What the hell? Then, the radio crackled back to life, and she could hear the rapid breaths of someone. A hesitation. Layla, we're losing cabin pressure. We need urgent support. Hang in there. She roared, her will binding the fractured situation together. Every second was crucial. She couldn't let these lives slip away. With every fiber in her being, she commanded the plane forward, leaning into the yoke, glancing furtively at the instrument panel. A shroud of dread draped over her as the looming shadow re-emerged, a phantom in the fog, darting around her aircraft like a kite yanked by an invisible force. What do you want? She shouted into the void, voice thick with adrenaline. I'll fight you. Suddenly, a deafening roar erupted from the unknown, a mechanical growl, tearing into the atmosphere around her. The shadow twisted again, now solidifying into a grotesque form right at her 4 o'clock. It was a drone, massive and menacing, painted black as night. Drones she knew were used for surveillance, but this felt different. A deliberate move. A threat, her mind raced. They could be here for a very specific reason. Perhaps they were there to ensure no one survived this night. Layla's gut twisted. Flight 732. Are you still with me? She barked into the mic, as she swung the yoke to pull away from the drone's path. Her heart hammered louder now than the throaty roar overhead. Dead silence now filled the cockpit once more. Her crew. Where were they? She could almost feel their fear radiating through the muted air. Layla, the voice faded, a flickering transmission lost like embers snuffed in the wind, leaving her in a silence thick enough to claw through. She surged forward, adrenaline pumping. She was not losing anyone, not today. But with every moment that ticked by, each glimmer of hope dwindled as the fog thickened, engulfing her. The cruel grip of fear strangled her. A shadow cracked through her thoughts like a thunderclap. What if she wasn't the only pilot in the skies? What if the conspirators above aimed to plummet them all to the ground? As her mind raced, a bone-chilling realization washed over her: the shadows weren't the only forces pursuing her. Those figures from the ground were more than specters in the fog. They were witnesses to a disaster waiting to unfold. And she felt it. The stakes had just been raised. Could she find the flight? Could she grasp the fate of Flight 732 out of the smog suffocating them both? With less than a heartbeat left, and the clouds closing in, she propelled her plane into the abyss, ready to fight for the light. But what would she uncover? Was she running into darkness, or was it the dawn of a revelation that would shatter everything she believed? The cockpit shuddered violently as turbulence hammered against the plane, shaking Layla's fragile grip on reality. Alarms painted red warnings across her instrument panel, insisting on her immediate attention. She steeled herself. Just breathe, Layla. You've got this. Her voice quivered as she said it, an echo of a mantra only half believed. She clutched the yoke tighter, her knuckles white. Flight 732, report status. She shouted again into the radio, but only static answered back, an unbearable silence settling like a lead weight in her chest. The drone circled more aggressively now, a hawk hunting its prey, forcing her to veer away to dodge its approach. Fear twisted in her stomach. What are you up to? She muttered. A part of her felt the urge to challenge the drone, but another part clamored for sanity. Then she caught a glimpse of the figures below, now clearer amidst the low-lying fog, and her heart sank. They weren't merely silhouettes, they moved like a living wall, an unyielding barrier of chaos. They watched her, eyes glinting with a mix of fear and hope. A tiny spark ignited within her. Could she be their salvation? A chilling roar vibrated through the air. A second drone? No, it couldn't be. She scanned the sky, looking for more threats, and her breath hitched when she saw it. Something else was emerging from the clouds. A larger aircraft? Her mind raced, hypothesizing possibilities. What were they trying to do? Layla, please respond. We can't hold. The transmission broke off abruptly. Panic enveloped her. No. She screamed, slamming her fists against the console. The finality of that voice, cut off, deeply unsettled her. A jarring blast of sound filled the cockpit, a thrumming drone signal overhead, blending into her own racing heartbeat. She swerved hard, feeling the pull of gravity press her into her seat. She had to maintain control, to fly away from the danger looming not just in the air, but potentially from those shadows below. Suddenly, sparks of recognition ignited a grim memory. Cecil, she breathed, recalling the training sessions, the classified documents about drones used by global factions. If they were here, it wouldn't just be for surveillance, it was something vastly more ominous. Their purpose had to be connected to her flight and Flight 732's fate. Flight 732. Are you there? Desperation dripped from her voice as she leaned closer to the mic, rendered raw by the unfolding chaos. But silence gripped the transmitter like a vice. Just then, the drone above her shifted into a more aggressive posture, its mounting machinery casting shadows across her windscreen. Just my luck, she chuckled bitterly, adrenaline and dread blending to fuel her resolve as she strove to elude its unyielding pursuit. Layla's mind whirled, connecting dots, each thought sharper than the last. This wasn't just about landing safely, it was about unraveling a sinister agenda tied to something greater than herself. The very fate of those below depended on her ability to rethink the playbook, dodge threats, and unmask the dark plot at hand. What if they wanted her to fail? In the depths of her thoughts, an unsettling question leaped to the forefront: why me? The fog thickened, swallowing her sanity, and as she labored to maintain altitude, she noticed a faint shimmer, a crack in the darkness. It pulsed like a beacon, hope blooming in the distance. But in her heart, a sinking fear settled. Was it a true sanctuary or just another trap waiting for her to fall? She gritted her teeth, willing herself to press on. What lay ahead? Would she reach that light or tumble deeper into the rabbit hole? A world of shadows stretched before her, decisions to be made, confrontations to be faced. And with each breath, she knew one thing remained true: the perilous race for survival hadn't just begun. It was now an all-out war against the unknown, and somewhere out there, beyond the fog and the darkening sky, she felt the presence of a nightmare yet to be unveiled. What secrets did it hold? Who truly ruled the game? The shimmer grew more pronounced, beckoning her like a lighthouse in a storm. Layla's heart pounded heavily against her ribcage, a frantic dance that thrummed with both trepidation and determination. The drone's shadow loomed larger, almost taunting. There was no room for doubt. This was her moment to decide. She pulled hard on the controls, angling the plane toward the beckoning light. The roar of the drone's engines roared in her ears, merging with the churning soundscape of her panic. Sweat dripped into her eyes, stinging. This wasn't just about survival, it was a battle for something profound: lives, truths, perhaps even her own sanity. Stay strong, she whispered to herself, pressing forward through the cocoon of uncertainty. Below, the figures were more than silhouettes now. They shuffled restlessly, clutching each other, eyes raised toward her like desperate prayers sent up into the ether. Then, in a flash, her mind snagged on a detail, something familiar. Among the crowd, a face stood out, eyes wide and pleading. Was it Cecil? She shook her head as if to clear the fog clouding her judgment. No, it couldn't be. But there was an undeniable twist of fate in those haunting eyes that sent chills racing up her spine. Gravity yanked at her senses as she pulled higher, forcing her to rise up into the embrace of dense clouds. The drone followed, relentless. Each moment felt like diving deeper into quicksand. The harder she fought, the less control she felt. Desperation tightened its grip, her breath shallow and erratic. Suddenly, a burst of static erupted through her radio again, followed by an unforeseen voice cutting through the chaos. Layla. That light, it's a trap, it's not what you think. She froze, the command reverberating through her mind. Who is this? She shouted, barely able to keep her voice steady against the onslaught of fear. Just listen. The light, a pause, then a loud crackle. It's a signal, a distract. Before the voice could finish, another explosion of static interrupted, drowning out the crucial warning. Panic surged through her, and her grip slipped slightly, the plane momentarily veering sideways. No. No. She fought to correct it, heart racing, the plane trembling under the strain. With renewed urgency, Layla shifted focus back to the figures. In that moment, she saw something else emerge from the gloom: a series of vehicles edging closer, their shadows menacing, engines rumbling like hungry beasts. Help us! A voice shouted from the ground, breaking through her thoughts. But help? From who? These new shadows paraded towards the light, each move choreographed by an unseen hand, and dread suffocated her every instinct to fly lower. Boom! A thunderous blast echoed above her as the drone fired a warning shot. The shockwave jolted her body, an icy punch of impending doom. I'm not going to die here. The word struck her like lightning, boiling the determination in her chest. She suddenly remembered their mission. Save the passengers. Save the crew. Time was not on her side, instinct kicked in. Layla swung the yoke hard, a last-ditch effort to break free and retreat. But engines whined in protest as she felt the resistance grow. All around her was chaos, and still the light shimmered, presenting itself as a tantalizing yet treacherous escape. Then, as if the universe had lost patience, the drone erupted forward, its blades slicing through the air dangerously close. Layla's breaths quickened. What if she crashed? What would happen to the people below? To the passengers on Flight 732, she glanced at the control panel, wrestled with thoughts spiraling like a vortex around her mind. Somehow, she had to take control of the intel before it all fell apart, to recraft the narrative that had already started writing itself in blood. With that last flicker of resolve, she closed her eyes for just a moment. "Let us dance," she murmured, gripping the yoke like an anchor. And as the shadows loomed, Layla prepared herself for a fight she never asked for. What would become of her, of those she hoped to save? The clock was ticking. The fog. Thin just enough for her to see the truth. No more illusions, no more shadows. A choice lay ahead, waiting for her to grasp it. But what would it cost her? The answer hovered unervingly close. Would this perilous path lead to salvation or obliteration, hanging by a thread of fate? Only one thing remained clear: she was not just a pilot anymore. She was now a player in a game far beyond her imagining. And someone, somewhere, was watching. The world outside the cockpit exploded in chaos as Layla wrestled with the yoke, feeling the strain of each turn. The shimmering light pulsed like a heartbeat, drawing her in even as the drone's mechanical growl bounced off the clouds, echoing her fears. She had to choose: dive or ascend, approach the figures below or escape from the menace looming above. Waves of uncertainty washed over her. What if Cecil was down there? What if he wasn't? The faces in the crowd blurred with the whirling clouds, but the fear remained her fear. The panic in her chest constricted tighter, squeezing the air from her lungs as shadows enveloped her cockpit. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life again. "Layla. The people, they're not who you think. There's a deeper game at play." The urgency froze her heart, but who could she trust? The light? The voice? Or her own instincts? "Get out of the way!" Another voice roared, followed by an anguished cry. Layla's heart skipped a beat as the fear of the unknown surged through her. She had no time to waste on hesitations. She had to act. Whatever was playing out below was spiraling into something she couldn't possibly comprehend. Gripping the yoke tighter, she accelerated, heading straight for the figures. The terrain was gaining definition, and the myriad voices began to rise, a cacophony of desperate pleas, piercing through her resolve. She couldn't close her eyes, however tempting that might be. She couldn't hide from the mission anymore. "Help us. Please." They echoed again, their cries mingling with the thrumming of her heart. Clarity surged in Layla's mind. "I'm coming for you," she shouted into the chaos, strengthening her resolve. She'd been given a chance to prove she wasn't just a footnote in someone else's story. Even as she dove, a new sound filled her ears, the drone's engines roaring to life like a dragon in pursuit. The pack of vehicles below screeched closer, headlights blazing like a pack of wolves closing in for the kill. But she had to stay focused. There was no backing down now. With a sudden jolt, the drone fired another warning shot, the explosive noise resonating through the air. The plane shuddered violently, the kind of tremors that froze passengers' faces and turned their stomachs. "Not today," Layla hissed, steering the plane firmly, determined to outmaneuver the beast behind her. She had to think like a survivor, not just a pilot. This was about lives, not just flights. Ahead, like a beacon, the figures continued to raise their arms, a mix of fear and hope painting their desperate faces. Her instinct screamed for her to swoop lower, get close, but danger wasn't just behind her, it was ahead too. What lay in the light was still a mystery. Layla, be careful. A new voice pierced through her comms, distant yet urgent. You're flying into the fire. The warning unsettled her. The fog thickened again, and as the light brightening, she couldn't ignore the sensation that something was horribly, irrevocably off. But there was no time to question. The risk was the only choice she had. She plunged closer, adrenaline rushing as the light enveloped her cockpit. One moment, she hesitated, the next, she was committed. Above all the distraction, she needed to focus. A flash of insight cracked through the tumult of vision of the truth. As she crossed that threshold, clarity cut like a knife. The figures weren't just victims, they were the puppets in a sinister game designed to keep her off balance, to keep her guessing. The revelation sent ice through her veins as the world around her shifted. The ground moved closer, the light too blinding. What was truly awaiting her beyond that shimmering veil? She dove forward. But salvation felt like a curse as she crossed into unknown peril. Would she crash onto the battlefield, or was it all a part of a larger design? The answer loomed like a dark storm on the horizon, but she had to know. What awaited her just beyond the shimmering light? Was it destiny or something far more sinister? Layla's heart raced as she barreled toward the blinding light. The world outside the plane morphed into a dazzling chaos of white and gold, swallowing everything into a surreal haze. It felt like plunging into the core of a star, and yet, the voices kept reaching out, echoing desperate thoughts wrapped in fear. As she crossed the threshold, the light enveloped her completely. For a moment, time stood still. Everything felt weightless, almost peaceful, until the ground rushed up like a fist. The metal shrieked as the landing gear made contact, jolting Layla back into her senses. She barely had time to register the sprawling landscape, a desolate battlefield littered with remnants of war and shadows lurking in the corners of her vision. She had thought she was heading into a rescue mission. But now, it felt like a trap. Layla quickly scanned her surroundings, her pulse a steady drum in her ears. The figures from before loomed over her, their eyes wide with terror. She felt a shiver race down her spine. Something was fundamentally wrong here. They were no longer the victims she had imagined, they seemed more like ghosts, caught between worlds. Layla. A frantic voice blared through her headset. It was Cecil, his tone strained and urgent. Get out now. You're not safe. Her breath hitched in her throat. She swung her head around, searching for him among the crowd, but all she saw were a sea of faces twisted with fear, yet reflecting an unsettling calm. They weren't panicking, they were waiting for something. What do you mean? She shouted back, her shoulders tightening. What is going on? The truth is worse than we thought. They lured you here to keep you quiet. His words struck like a bolt of lightning. The unfolding realization gripped her, she was merely bait in a malevolent game, a pawn intended to draw out whoever was orchestrating this horror. The drone behind her wasn't just a pursuer, it was a sentinel, safeguarding the secrets below. Get in the plane, Layla. We have to leave. Cecil's voice trembled through the crackling comms, propelling her into immediate action. But the plane was surrounded. Dark figures appeared from the shadows, their silhouettes towering like revenants. She couldn't just sit there. Every instinct told her to fight, to stand her ground. But desperation clawed at her, she could feel the oppressive weight of the unknown closing in. Push forward. Lift off. Cecil yelled, panic lacing his voice. You have to trust me. She pressed the throttle, feeling the raw power of the aircraft surge. As the engine roared, the plane shuddered and groaned but didn't lift. The crowd began to close in, their hands reaching out, grabbing at anything they could. Get away from me. Layla screamed, her voice cracking as fear twisted into rage. I'm not your savior. But it was too late. The figures surged closer, encroaching upon her. She could see their eyes hollow, almost lifeless yet pleading. Were they victims, or had they willingly followed a darker path? Her hands shook violently as they scrambled to steady the yoke. Just then, the drone roared overhead, sending a chilling tremor through the air. Flames erupted from its underside, illuminating the shadows and exposing the truth. These weren't just helpless souls, they were players in a game far beyond her understanding. Then came the pull. Like a whisper against her ear, a terrifying urge tugged at her. Join them, embrace the chaos, be part of the darkness. No, I want tea. Layla cried, battling against the tide. She pushed the plane back into the sky, but resistance battered her spirit like a storm. The drone's shadow loomed above, and the landscape below warped into a jigsaw of fragmented memories. What choices had led everyone here? Was there still a way out, or had she crossed into an inescapable web of deception? And as the lights of her plane flickered in and out, she knew the truth wasn't just obscured. It was a conundrum that could shatter everything she believed about herself. Determination surged, but the questions loomed larger. Who were the real shadows here? And would she ever find the way back to her own truth? As she soared into the uncertain sky, a new voice surged through the chaos, echoing with dark clarity. You can't escape the game, Layla. You're already part of it. The resolve within her wavered. Ahead lay a path shrouded in darkness, and she knew she had only just begun to unravel the threads of a reality that could consume her whole. What awaited her in the shadowed heart of the game? Layla fought against the chaos, the plane roiling beneath her grip as the dark figures pressed closer, their hands clawing at the metal skin of her aircraft. The drone hung above like a predator, its hungry drone slicing through the air, roaring like a beast drawn to the tumult below. Every instinct screamed at her to dive, to weave through the web, but fear anchored her feet to the ground. This wasn't just about flying. It was life or death. Cecil, she gasped, desperately trying to focus as the plane shimmied, tell me what to do. Get that bird off the ground. Ignore them, they're part of it. His words blurred in the tumult, but the urgency drummed in her ears, pushing her to act. The engine sputtered, then roared in defiance, but she still couldn't gain altitude. She flicked switches, her heart in a death grip, fear and instinct battling inside her. The shadows pressed tighter, their muffled cries echoing like ghosts in her mind. They were desperate, lost, but so was she. With every ounce of strength, she yanked the yoke back, feeling the plane shake, the world tilt. A flash of flames exploded above as the drone lit the skies. Cecil! She shouted, helplessness flooding her voice. I can't. Layla closed her eyes for a brief moment, recalling the faces back home, the smiles, the hopes. She mentally anchored herself in them as she thrust the throttle forward, determined to make this work. The aircraft lurched, lifting just an inch, before plummeting down again. And then, a thunderous crack of thunder erupted just behind her, rattling the glass. The drone had shot a missile. Layla, it's coming. Cecil's frantic voice broke through the static, the terror sharpening his every word. The blast echoed, a shockwave that sent her crashing against the cockpit's side. She gasped, her vision blurring as everything went gray for a moment. Shards of fear wove through the raging storm in her mind, and she felt the cold touch of despair threaten to sweep her away. Get focus. Fly. She whispered to herself, snapping back. She righted herself in the cockpit, every muscle trembling. The plane had buckled under the attack, but it was still alive. With a surge of iron will, she gripped the controls again, pushing against the panic flaring like violent fireworks in her chest. The landscape shuddered below, a flat expanse that churned with shadows. We can't give in, she muttered. We can't. In one desperate motion, she twisted the throttle and pulled back, forcing the plane to climb. The drone loomed over her. It released another barrage, angry tempest lashing out like a thunderstorm. But Layla was moving now, a phoenix from ashes slicing through the smoky chaos. Come on, she whispered as the altimeter inched higher. Just as the drone dove again, she took a sharp left, narrowly missing the explosion of fire below. But what awaited her in the sky? The weight of the dark game loomed overhead, stirring doubts deep within. Suddenly, the cockpit lights began to flicker. A shadow covered her controls. Time felt suspended, stretched like a rubber band, ready to snap. She looked back, half expecting a confrontation, but no. The shadows danced on the edges of her vision, whispering chaos and distractions, taunting her with unresolved truths. Layla. The mission is not over. Cecil's voice broke through, a beacon in her turmoil. You're not just flying anymore, you have to see what they've hidden. What had they hidden? She felt the ache of the unknown gnaw at her heart. Every instinct warned her of a malignancy lurking in plain sight. You can't let them win. Cecil urged again, his words twisting like vines about her neck. There's more at stake. She pressed on, the plane screeching as if to protest the burden. But she sensed it as if chains of dread encircled the cockpit. In the dwindling twilight above, shapes began to emerge, dark and sinister. They were waiting for the moment she'd slip, ready to strike. An overwhelming sense of dread clawed at her, yet with every ounce of determination, she pushed the aircraft higher. Around her, shadows lurked, and the voices grew louder, more insistent. Join us, Layla. It's safer here. But the haunting whispers were not for her, they were a warning. And as the cockpit lights blinked in and out, she realized the truth was close, just beyond her reach. She gritted her teeth, eyes steeling. No, I want to become one of you. She cried, her voice resonating against the hum of the engines. She was digging deeper, insisting on uncovering the mission they played to obscure. A pulse of imminent danger tickled the back of her neck, cool and sharp. And just as she turned, determined to confront whatever awaited her in the void, she saw it, the undeniable truth slithering out from the shadows. Layla. Cecil's voice pierced through, but the revelation before her stopped her cold. What dark truth lay waiting in the abyss ahead? Why was she truly there? The skies darkened, fear tightening around her heart. What if this was only the beginning? The roar of engines enveloped Layla as she fought against her own doubts, adrenaline coursing through her veins like fire. This was at the moment that would define her story. She tightened her grip on the yoke, leaning into the turbulence as her heart drummed the rhythm of pure survival. Cecil. What are they hiding? She shouted into the chaos of the cockpit, desperate for clarity amid the swirling fears. The truth about Flight 732. His voice crackled, urgency weaving through the static. They planned this. You're part of it now. You have a chance to break it all open. Refusing to believe she had become just another pawn, she adjusted her ascent, climbing higher as the shadows began swirling, dark forms flickering just on the edges of perception. She realized they were more than just ghosts, they were reflections of the very fears she had tried to escape. Suddenly, the dark drone lunged forward once more, releasing another warning shot, the air splitting with a deafening crack. The blast sent tremors through her cockpit, rattling her resolve. Breathing sharply, Layla yelled, "Not today." With a fierce pull on the controls, she swerved away from the impending catastrophe, channeling every ounce of fury into a single determined flight path. The cockpit lights flickered again, each failure a cruel reminder that time was slipping away. Would she find the truth or become just another lost soul among the shadows? Screeching storm clouds swirled ominously around her as she tried to break free from the twisted shadows closing in. I want to be your puppet. She screamed, her voice a steady anchor in the tempest. Forcing her head back into focus, she took note of the figures below still clutching each other in frenetic desperation. They were holding on to hope, searching for strength. The lifelines were there, and as she peered through the layers of thick fog, something glinted beneath the shadows. An opening, with renewed energy surging through her, Layla whispered to herself, "You can do this." She pressed forward, ears ringing with the sounds of wind and engines as she braced for the landing. This was a gambit, a chance to pull everyone from the clutches of the dark game they had all unwittingly joined. Then it happened. A blink of light, a soft voice breaking through the chaos, "Please. Help us." It was one of the passengers from Flight 732. In that moment, every fear she had felt rejoiced in the middle of her heart, but she understood something vital: their connection was stronger than fear, stronger than any fabricated conspiracy. "I'm coming. Hold on." She called into the radio, determination crystallizing. And as if the forces around her understood the necessity of that connection, the fog began to thin, revealing a network of lights and faces blooming from the shadows, a flicker of hope amidst despair. Layla focused on the silhouettes, unwavering as she committed to the descent, spiraling the plane with a controlled resolve through the dark. "I can do this," she mouthed like a mantra, confident that she was meant to break through the storm. The ground rushed up to meet her, and she steadied the aircraft, navigating the maze of shadows with keen precision. She could see Cecil in the distance, a beacon within the crowd. He was alive, hopeful, ready to guide them through the aftermath of the turmoil. On 3. She counted down, her heart clenching painfully as she felt the drums of anxiety pulse. She pressed the throttle and unearthed the roar of her engines, willing them to be resilient. The earth shook as metal met pavement. The plane skidded, groaning against the pull of gravity, a gut-wrenching moment of chaos spiraling into silence. She had landed, but the fight wasn't over. Voices filled her ears as the cabin door swung wide. Chaos surged, but she had brought them back. "Layla." Cecil raced toward her, eyes ablaze with triumph. "You did it. You saved them." As the passengers began to pour out, cheers erupted from the crowd, a roar of gratitude filling the air. Her chest tightened, an overwhelming flood of emotions washing over her. Relief coursed through her veins, a cathartic salty mix from tears she didn't know she was holding back. Hope flickered, and she finally felt the warmth of love from those she had saved. But that nagging whisper of uncertainty resided in the back of her mind. What had truly happened to them in the air? Who would answer for the shadows that haunted their existence? As Cecil reached for her hand, she understood that this was only the beginning of her fight, not just for herself, but for all those lost in the darkness waiting for the light. Together, she promised softly, her heart an unbreakable bond as they stood shoulder to shoulder. By reclaiming the truth, she would embark on a mission to ensure their past would never rise from the ashes again. That a sense of purpose kindled in her every heartbeat, as they gathered strength in numbers. The fog of uncertainty had lifted, and the path before them glimmered with newfound hope. But as she looked beyond the horizon, she knew they had only just begun to uncover the truth. The message woven through this darkness shouldn't just be saved, but illuminated for all to see. And just as she embraced her newfound bravery, a soft breeze whispered, leaving her with a promise of tomorrow. Now, the time had come for you to act. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Get in now while you can.